Hi, this is Scott with Etrailer, and today we're taking a look at and installing our Curt 4-pole wiring for 2025 Hyundai Palisade. So if you ever plan on pulling a small trailer, or you have lighted bike racks or maybe a cargo carrier, your 4-pole wiring is going to be an essential part. Whenever you get these installed, a lot of times people like to do them when they do the hitch at the same time. It just makes it a little more convenient to do all at once. They're really nice. It's going to mount up underneath, so you're not going to see any kind of a bunch of wires hanging down. It's all you're really going to see is this part right here. So it really isn't intrusive. If you didn't want to see this part all the time, you could even tuck this up under your bumper and maybe tie it up there out of the way. Another option you can get for these is a bracket, and it's a no-drill bracket. It just kind of clamps around your tube, and it'll be able to have this mounted right here as well. So that's a good option to take a look at. But the main reason you're going to want a 4-pole wiring is if you do have a small trailer, it's going to keep you legal. It's going to give you all of the lights that are going to notify drivers behind you of what your intentions are. It's going to give you your marker lights, which are your tail lights. It's going to give you your brake lights and your left and right turn signals. So it's going to keep you completely legal going down the road. So if you have any questions or comments about the 4-pole wiring, feel free to leave a comment below. We'd love to hear from you. As far as installation, this is pretty straightforward. It is some wiring, so it can be a little daunting sometimes. But if it's something you don't have time to do, you can always take a look at our dealer locator and get something done locally. If you do plan on doing it yourself, stick around, watch our video, and we'll help you get it installed. To start our installation of our trailer wiring, we're going to need to pull both of our tail lights out. To do that, we have two little tabs here, and I'm just going to take a plastic tool, get behind it, and just pop those out. Now behind those we have two Phillips screws. We're just going to get those removed. Now we just need to pull straight back on our light housing to get that to pop loose. This part can be a little tricky. Sometimes if you give it a little wiggle, it'll come loose for you. Now if we turn our light sideways, we'll see this tab. We just want to push that in and disconnect our housing. Now we're underneath the vehicle on the driver's side. We need to get this panel out of the way. So what I'm going to do is just get our pop clips out, get a screwdriver under them. And those come out pretty easy. Now we have two 14mm plastic nuts. Now if you just pull a little downward pressure on your panel, it'll come right out for you. Now we have our wiring harness, and we have our shorter set of wires. These are going to run up to our driver's side. We're just going to fish that wire up and through. And we have our green side. This side is going to run up over to our passenger side, and we will snake that up to our tail light. Now I just took some extra air line that I had laying around, and I pushed my line down through and found an open spot where I seen daylight through. I just tied my wiring off with electric tape to my tube. And now I'm just working it up and through. Now I can just undo my tape, and I'll follow that same procedure with our green wire on the other side. Now with our plugs that we pulled through, we're going to have a male side and a female side. And we have our little latch clip. We want to look and make sure we have those lined up with each other. Now we can just click those together. You'll hear an audible click. Make sure they're connected well. And those connected. We'll move on to our ground for our box. We're just going to find a good location up in here where we'll have enough room to put our light assembly back in place. Now in your kit, you're going to have a self-tapping screw, and that's just going to hold your ground in place. So we just went ahead and ran that right there, and we know this is a good spot because we're going to have enough clearance when we put our housing back in place. Now we'll take the other end of our wire and plug it in. Make sure we're lining up our clip points. And a good audible click. Now we can put our housing back in place. Now I noticed as we started to put this back in place that with our line and our plug-in out, it did want to let our housing fit. So what I did is just tucked it behind our wires. And when we put it back in place, that's going to give us enough room. So another thing you want to watch is make sure your line that we're putting on is tucked back in there. Just carefully line up your pins and push it back in place. Now we have our green wire that comes out of our control box, and we went up and I found a spot where I can go up over the frame. That's going to help protect my wire. Then we came up and across, and we have existing wiring up through here I was able to tie off of. The main thing we want to be concerned of is we don't want our wire to ever drop down and come out, or you don't want it to touch anything hot, so back here is a great place. So we went across over the frame again. That gets me up and over the exhaust so I don't have to worry about my wire touching this. And then we popped out right here on this side. And then we fish wired up to our brake light housing. There's a little slot up through there where you can pull your wire up and through. Now, just like we did on the driver's side, we're just going to pop our clip in place and plug it into our wire that comes out of our harness. Make sure you line up your clip sides. Get that to click. Now we can tuck our wire behind our existing harness. Make sure our wire's out of the way. And now we can push our brake light assembly back into place. Now we have our housings back in place, we can go ahead and shut our hatch. Now in your kit, you won't get a heat shrink butt connector, but we're going to use one because this is back here in the back and water spray can get to it. So we're just going to add one of these to it and we'll get that crimped in place. This is going to be our power wire that's going to be running forward, and that is our black wire that comes off of our box. We have that one on there. Anytime you crimp something, you want to give it a little check, make sure it's good. Now we'll take our wire out of our roll that comes in our kit. Just want to twist that together and put that into our connector. Now we'll get that crimped into place. Now I'll take my heat source and heat up our butt connector. That's going to make it shrink up around the line. That's going to give us a nice waterproof seal. Now we found a good place to put our box. We wanted to make sure this resin portion is pointing down to the ground, but we did end up having this heavy factory wire loom through here, so I ended up zip tying through the hole in it to that up here, and then I ended up zip tying all the way around the box and around our harness and got it all zip tied in place there, so that's a good solid place for it. And now I did end up running our 4-pole wiring across and tied off here, went through and behind and then up, leaving a little bit of slack, and then ran it down to our hitch here. Now what I plan to do is we have our connection made. What I'm going to do is just find a good location to run this black wire all the way forward and up into our engine compartment to our battery. Now we can show you where we routed our power wire. We tied off to the same harness that we tied our box to, jumped up and over, and came up and kind of just made it form to our frame here, and went up over. We have our rear cross member that comes across, and we want to make sure that we don't get it into any suspension components or into any exhaust. So we went up over all of that and ended up coming right over here and met up with some factory lines that are running through the back. We tied off to them there, come across over by the gas tank, and we ended up going around the gas tank, came over and our lines kind of jogged over this way. So we tied off to them here and then came up and ended up running up to the engine compartment there. Now, once I get it back down on the ground, I can go up and grab my wires and pull them up tight. And I can tie off to something up there so they're nice and tight, and it'll stay out of any exhaust or any moving parts is the main thing we're looking for. Now we have our wire into our engine compartment and ran up. It's coming up right underneath of our brake booster here. And once I figure out how much line I want to have to get it to over here, I'll end up tying off to this, and that's going to give it more support and keep it off of things back there as well. So now, in our kit, we're going to have our fuse holder. I like to strip off a little more line off of it than what they have it. Let's get a little bit of that stripped off of there. Now with that, in your kit, you have a ring terminal. Just want to run that onto one end of your fuse holder and get that crimped on. Get a good solid crimp, check it, make sure it's good, and we are. Now same on our other side. I like to strip off a little more. Now again, we'll be using a heat shrink butt connector instead of the ones that come in the kit. I like using these, they just give it a good waterproof seal. Like that. Crimp that into place. Now with that all built, we can figure out how much line we want to run over to our battery. Now sometimes it is a good idea, if you do have some extra, you can always just bundle it up and put it over here out of the way. That way if they need to pull out their battery, they can get your wiring out of the way so it doesn't damage it. So that's always a good option as well. Now we have the end of our power wire stripped off. We can take our fuse holder kit that we just built and crimp that into place. Now with our heat source, we can shrink up our heat shrink. Now without our fuse installed, we're going to go ahead and run off this post right here, and that's going to be a 10 millimeter. I'm just going to back that off. I know it's hard to see. We're just going to take that off, and we're going to take our terminal end, run that to that post, and this is our positive side of our battery. We just run that down. Give that a little snug down. Don't have to get too crazy with it. Now, we did trim a little bit of our cover here. I'll clean that up a little bit more, but that's gonna help us get clearance for our wire to come out. Otherwise, it's a really tight fit, so you wouldn't be able to have that. Now that we have that connected, we're gonna go ahead and insert our fuse. And with that, we have a 10 amp fuse. We'll just pop that into our fuse holder. Now we can check our wiring and make sure everything works. Now we can test our lights for our trailer lights. We have our tester hooked up, and we'll do our left turn, and that is working. We'll do our right turn, that is working. We'll do lights on, those work, and brake lights with the left turn and brakes with the right turn. Everything's working. With it tested and working, we'll put our underbody panel back in place, and that'll do it for our look at and our install of our Curt 4-pole wiring for 2025 Hyundai Palisade. I'm Scott with Etrailer, and thanks for watching.